With the winter fast approaching and the ongoing energy crisis worsening due to the war between Russia and Ukraine, the UK government is now looking at other alternative sources of energy for home heating. And for that, hydrogen is now being considered.
For anyone already worried about bills, any price rise is bad news. Today's announcement means gas and electricity prices will rise by 2%. A household using a typical amount of energy will pay £1,755 a year, up £35. On a default tariff, it's roughly £2 extra for every £100 currently spent.
The Iran war is quietly destroying British industry, and nobody is talking about it. There is a fire burning through the heart of British manufacturing, and it is not the kind you can see on a news ticker or read about in a government press release. It is the kind that scorches balance sheets, silences furnaces, and forces hard-working people out of jobs they have held for decades. And right now, it is spreading. Welcome to British Energy, the channel that cuts through the noise and gives you the real picture of how global politics shapes the energy and economic future of the United Kingdom. If you are new here, do yourself a favor and subscribe. Hit that button now. This channel exists because someone has to ask the difficult questions, and frankly, it might as well be us. Right, let us get into it. Deep in the Black Country, in a town called Halesowen, sits Summers Forge, a 160-year-old steelworks that has cast columns for the Bank of England, helped anchor the Titanic, and supplied propeller shafts for Britain's nuclear submarines. 140 people, 160 years of history, and right now, it is in survival mode. Tammy Inglis, the finance director at Summers Forge, did not mince her words when she described what the Iran conflict is doing to her business. She called it very damaging. Before the conflict, energy made up about a fifth of the Forge's manufacturing costs. That proportion is rising. The monthly gas bill has jumped from £150,000 to as high as £250,000, and Inglis says they are, in her words, literally just having to take the prices as they come. Let that sink in for a moment. A company that makes parts for nuclear submarines, critical national infrastructure, is now at the mercy of the spot gas market. That is the state of British industry in 2025. So how did we get here? The answer runs through the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow corridor of water in the Middle East through which roughly a fifth of the world's oil and gas normally passes. Since Iran began attacking ships in the Gulf and restricting access through the strait, global energy markets have gone haywire. British wholesale gas prices surged to 171 pence per therm after the conflict began, the highest since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. They had been sitting at 78p a therm at the end of February. Let that number settle, nearly double, in weeks. And the UK, importing around 70% of its gas, is acutely exposed to every tremor in that market. Now, stay with us here, because this next part matters enormously and isn't getting nearly enough attention. The chemical sector is in a category of its own when it comes to pain. Unlike most industries, chemical companies rely on gas not just to power their plants, but as feedstock, the raw material from which their products are actually made. So when gas prices spike, they get hit twice, once on their energy bills and once on their inputs. The industry's output has already fallen by 60% since 2021. At least 25 sites have shut since then, and the Iran war has arrived as what could be the killing blow for many of those that remain. Peter Huntsman, the chief executive of Huntsman Corporation, which operates one remaining UK plant on Teesside, said something that ought to cause alarm in every government department in Westminster. He said, and we quote directly, "If today's economics were to stay in place for the next 3 months, he would shut down his UK facility and import product from China or the United States instead." 80 jobs. Gone. Just like that. And he was blunt about why. Some of his customers, already squeezed themselves, are looking to Chinese suppliers the moment he adds any surcharge to cover his rising costs. The economics of British chemical manufacturing are, in his words, already broken. The war has simply accelerated the inevitable. If you are finding this valuable, and we genuinely hope you are, please subscribe to British Energy. It takes seconds, it costs nothing, and it is the single most powerful way to make sure this kind of reporting keeps coming. The algorithm doesn't do the work for us. You do. So go on, subscribe. Now, some of you will be thinking, surely the government steps in. And yes, occasionally it does. Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos received a £120 million government bailout in December to save its ethylene cracker at Grangemouth, but Huntsman was characteristically direct about what that reveals. The large firms with political visibility get rescued, and the small ones get nothing. If you're a small operation with a couple dozen employees, he said, you're not going to get a bailout.
And if your balance sheet cannot weather a storm for a couple of months, which most small companies cannot, you go under. This is not hypothetical. This is happening now.
Let us pan back and look at the continental picture, because what is happening in Britain is part of a wider European industrial crisis that has been building for years. Adolfo Aiello, Deputy Director General at Eurofer, that is the EU's steel representative body, described the war as highlighting a broader structural issue. Even when most European electricity comes from low-cost renewables, it is the last gas-fired plant in the system that sets the price for everyone. Every geopolitical shock, therefore, ripples directly through to industrial electricity bills across the continent. And the supply disruption is not limited to gas and oil. Chemical cargoes held up at the Strait last week included 26 vessels carrying over 1.5 million tons of bauxite, limestone, and sulfur, 18 vessels carrying grain, and 19 ships loaded with fertilizer. Egyptian urea, used by European farmers, has jumped from $500 per ton to over $650 since the war began. That price increase will eventually reach your supermarket. It always does. The echoes of Ukraine are unmistakable. Back at Summers Forge, Inglis described exactly that parallel. During the Ukraine crisis, the forge was forced to lay people off when gas prices peaked at £8 a therm. They're not there yet, but she was clear about the risk. It's still early days, she said, but I think there's a risk that we could get to that level. Meanwhile, steel suppliers are holding price quotes for just 24 hours. In normal times, those quotes last a month. You cannot build a business, price a contract, or plan a workforce around 24-hour certainty. The entire industrial supply chain is operating on edge. And here's the part that nobody in power seems willing to say plainly. Britain's industrial base is not just being battered by a war in the Middle East, it is being battered by a structural failure to protect energy-intensive industries from the volatility that the entire global energy system is built upon. The Iran conflict did not create this fragility, it exposed it. BASF, one of the world's largest chemical groups, said it was too early to judge the financial impact. That is the language of a company buying time. When companies of that scale hedge their language, it usually means the numbers behind closed doors are not encouraging. There is something almost quietly devastating about the image Inglis painted at Summers Forge, a company that has supplied the Ministry of Defense for over a century, with 34 furnaces and 23-meter lathes built to machine submarine shafts, now debating whether to lock in gas prices for 2027, and paralyzed by the fear that if they do, they will end up paying twice the market rate and become uncompetitive. That is not a company problem. That is a national infrastructure problem dressed up as an energy bill. Britain imports 70% of its gas. It has hollowed out much of its heavy manufacturing over several decades, and now, every time there is a conflict in a region that controls a meaningful share of global energy supply, this country holds its breath and hopes the market does not do what it has a habit of doing, which is making things considerably worse before they get better. This is the reality of British energy security in 2025. Not a clean transition story, not a green grid triumph. A family-owned forge in the Black Country, hoping the gas price does not double again before summer. That is the conversation we are here to have at